heard stories that Sachin Tendulkar initially wanted to be a bowler.
Yeah.
And then somebody spotted and said, actually, here's what you should be doing. Tomorrow you will say, I want to become department head in 3 years. How come that one became department head? The minute you start defining your life by these finite goals, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, particularly when comparing with others and their career trajectories. And that's what concerns me the most. Choose your fulcrum in terms of what appeals to you, what suits your personal situation the most, rather than just going with where everybody else is going. Do you do what you love doing and what you're good at? Or do you become good at and start loving something for which there is an opportunity? Which comes first?
So, dear audience, it's a great pleasure to have Mr. Anand Shankar, the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer for Deloitte South Asia, to be amongst us.
Thank you, sir.
And the topic of the podcast is the fulcrum to pivot your careers. This is a period where change is inevitable. People are working in the industry and then they feel whether the fitment is correct or they need to change. Many of them aspire for bigger roles and hence they go in for higher education. So I remember one of your lines which says that you need to pause to reflect, and this reflection will give learning. Without learning, there cannot be growth. And hence, the pause is growth. Fascinating lines. Truly impressed. But these people have also taken some pause. This pause is for reflection, but the process of reflection is not so very easy. It is slightly complex. So I was wondering that if you could guide people that when we take a pause and we are reflecting, how this process should be.
Sure. I'll try. This is a very pet area of mine, and I'm trying to do a lot of research work around this. I've written a few papers, and I do talk about it frequently. And I have been working on it for about 30 plus years, and I don't think I understand it at all. So with that caveat, let me explain the context on this. So people say that, no, let me back up before people. The way all of us learn as children is very different from how we start learning as adults. Would you agree? Yeah? That's why that is called pedagogy. Pedagogy means children, how they learn, versus how you and I learn as adults, and that's called andragogy. So andragogy is how adults learn. And of course, Dr. Singh and the academics here are the experts at that. So I'll try my 2 cents. When adults learn, people say that you learn by experience. Have you heard that? Yes. That you experience? Not true. You can go through the same experience again and again and again and not learn anything from it unless you stop and you think about that experience. That is the pause and reflection I talk about, which is that once you go through something, let's say you do a particular project. Doesn't matter whether it's gone well or it's not gone well. Whatever are the results and the outcomes, especially so if it has gone well. See, when it fails, all of us stop and think as to, what went wrong, and we try and analyze it. We do root cause analyses, this, that. There are many ways of approaching the problem solving of that. But if it has succeeded, we assume it's because of our brilliance. And we go on to the next one, thereby learning nothing. My recommendation is every now and then, after you go through an experience, it could be as simple as not like a momentous project or a capstone thing you've done, but as simple as today's session. Like today, you sat here for a while. When you go back, think about this session, how you received whatever the messages that were coming across, how you processed that, and what did you learn from it. That's reflection. It need not even be your own experience. You could be listening to something, reading something, watching a podcast, reading a book or an article or whatever. But unless you pause for a minute and reflect, particularly on experience, certainly for everything, but particularly in experience, I believe you'll be doing yourself a disservice and not gaining any learning out of that. And my recommendation, sir, is that all of us as adults go through multiple experiences, personal experiences, professional experiences, academic experiences, social community experiences. We should find some time to reflect on it. Can I reflect on it once a month? No. You would have forgotten a large part of how you felt and what happened. The details would be missed. The nuances of the learning, therefore, will be very shallow.
That's right.
So periodically, I'm not suggesting you do it for every hour or so and so. That is entirely up to you. But perhaps at least once a day or twice a week, or at least at the bare minimum once a week, if we just sit back. And pauses like what you're taking this year as a pause, and that's what I think Dr. Singh is
That's what I represent.
right? If your entire course is for a year, use this year to do a reset, because you defaulted into many things. You went from grade 10 to 12, you went from grade 12 to your undergrad, you went from your undergrad or your postgrad to some employment that was offered immediately to you. You chose some function that you thought. Now you're afforded an opportunity that not too many people have, which is this something that I truly enjoy? Am I likely to enjoy it going forward? And when I say enjoy, is it that I'm having fun? Am I learning? Am I earning? Is this something that brings out the best faculties in me, etc.? That's the reflection that I'm talking about. And one other encouragement, if I may take another minute, sir, is in addition to this pausing and reflecting, I would also suggest you start involving a few other people in this pausing and reflecting. Share it with someone else, someone who's got your best interests in mind, right? Not someone with a not very good agenda, right? Someone whom you trust, and bounce it off, because sometimes we feel alone during these reflections, and we're not sure if the distillation is okay. So I'm not using words like coach or mentor or well-wisher or anybody like that. You choose. But if you have a circle of others that you can share this with and reflect together, maybe it could be your colleague or peer. Doesn't have to be somebody who's more erudite or more experienced. For different contexts, you can choose. But if you reflect as a group, for instance, once you finish a case study, that is also good reflection. So it's not something that you do in a dark room alone. I'm not talking about mindfulness here. I'm not talking about beingfulness here. Not the sort of meditative state. By all means, do that if you like. But this is very base level reflection I'm talking about.
That's very important, that the reflections should come from people whom you expect may have a different perspective.
Correct.
So different angles to a particular situation, your viewpoint, probably it can be done. Interesting. In one of your sessions, you were also talking about learning and compounding, the importance of compounding. So, generally when we see compounding, it is the same entity which is being multiplied again, or addition happens. So we generally start thinking in terms of incremental increase. So there is a problem. We're talking about exponential gains generally, and people say that incremental increases over the period will bring exponential gains. And for that, people generally tend to find out what is the going trend. For instance, many of these young people would be thinking whether go into business analytics or go into marketing or finance. Within the industry, which industries are going to do good? People tend to take trends as a cue for developing themselves further. But I also remember one of your comments that when the word is going zig, you go zag. How does that add value? That would be an interesting thing to know.
There are there are two questions or two aspects that you're talking about. When the world is going zig, you go zag. That's I'm going to use that, even though those are not my words. I really like it, so quietly I'll copy. That's what consultants do anyway. Um, uh, that's one sort of umbrella point, and the other one is where do you do what you love doing and what you're good at, or do you become good at and start loving something for which there is an opportunity? Which comes first? Is what if my skills currently and my passion currently are superfluous or are redundant, right? Will I be able to monetize it? Can my passion drive my profession? That's an age-old question, right? And only you can be the ultimate judge of that, right? It depends on what truly your needs are. If your needs are survival today, a career today, never mind my passion, and I can give you an example of somebody very close to me. He's extraordinarily close. He came All India in the top 10 ranks in his chartered accounting exam. And in ACS, which is the company secretaryship, which he did a few years later, he came All India again in the top 10. Right? He was a CFO of very large organizations. He's taken them public, and he spent about close to 35, 40 years as. He never wanted to become CEO. He had many opportunities. He just remained CFO of larger and more complex organizations. And till the day he quit his final job, almost close to retirement age, he hated it. He hated it with a passion. He was fantastic at it, but he hated it. All his life, he wanted to be a singer. Right? Now, I don't want to tell you whether he's a good singer or bad singer or whatever. All his life, he was passionate only about singing. And somehow, because of family and personal and all of that, he couldn't pursue that. And after retirement, he's now started singing, and he's not making tons of money, but he's very happy. And he's regretting that perhaps he should have tried that earlier. So this is one example. I have another very, very close person, a cousin of mine actually, who is a sensational singer, who loved singing, and who has not made a single dime. Dedicated his entire life to singing and remains in poverty till date. He had other skills he could have pursued. Now, if you juxtapose these two, you will say that the person who, the finance guy that I'm talking about, is far more successful from a monetary perspective. But my cousin is the happiest person in the world. So what do you want? Even though he's dithering from a socio-economic perspective, you will not meet a happier soul. Genuinely. He's not bitter that he didn't make it or whatever. What temperament do you have? And are you ready to face life and the consequences if your passion and profession don't coincide? Today, however, you have a choice. And I would encourage you to do this. I would encourage you to pick a profession or whatever it is that you're good at, become very good at it, and continue to hone it. And I will come to the second part of your question, which is, do I pick the industry and then my profession will come? That's a more complex question. But pick that and go after it, but also have what I would call a side hustle, right? Or a side helpful. The difference between a side hustle and a side helpful is in a side hustle you make money. For example, the same singing career, 20 years ago he could have started a karaoke bar or whatever. He had plenty of money. He could have pursued his passion and made a little bit of money. Or a side helpful, he could have started singing lessons, thereby working on his passion, not making money, but giving back to society. Whatever it is that floats your boat, whatever it is that you like, right? So a side hustle or a side helpful, today we can do that.
Yeah.
Most organizations will in fact encourage it and say that have multiple avenues to grow yourself professionally and personally, socially and through the community and whatever else you want to do. And that's an amazing way of driving both your passion and profession, not necessarily coinciding it, but in parallel. Right? So do you first find your personal passion or profession? If it hasn't found you already, it's not your passion. Sometimes you might discover it a little late, but by and large, you'd have found it. And there's no harm. If you want to be economically successful, then look at what are the sunrise areas. Like, for example, one of the current examples that I'm working on with somebody is there is a genuine lack of rural marketing specialists in India. Genuine rural marketing specialists. Not somebody who did a 6-month gig in North Karnataka and semi-urban Karnataka and becomes a rural marketing specialist. I'm talking about a genuine, you can't even attend a course on rural marketing. But we all know that rural marketing is going to be super critical for the success of any organization, especially the B2B ones that are going to go forward, right? B2C has always been, fairly critical. But somehow it doesn't come into our radar. And that is why I'm suggesting that when you go zig, or the world goes zig, look at an opportunity that is emerging and go zag. Yeah. I'm not saying go zag or contradict for the sake of being contrarian. If you like doing that, by all means, go for it. But it's not just about that. It's about being a bit more thoughtful about what is it that you would like to be 10 years from now, rather than what is the best placement offer you will get today. Remember, this is a marathon. So the one that comes to you with the best offer today may not be the compounding career that you want 10 years from now. And I'd rather that you focus on that. Unless, of course, you have some compunction. Everybody has different economic needs and so on and so forth. All of us have EMIs. And if that is going to drive your today's decision, but keep an eye on whether this is sufficient or whether I need to use this as a stepping stone in order to get to the next point. Hope that
Indeed.
sort of enables a little bit of your thought process skills in terms of what we mean by zig versus zag.
And I am reminded of one of the studies done by Stanford around 3 years back, which said the worst advice that can be given to people is that follow your passion. There are various reasons which they have given. One of the reasons is that by following your passion today, you are kind of sure that this is your passion, which you rightly said that if you've not found it till now, so probably it doesn't, you don't have that. Yeah. And then they say that the passions may keep changing. And one very dangerous aspect of this, which you linked with economic stability and is that usually when we talk about passions, it would be about some sport, it would be about music, it would be about... Rarely have I met anyone who would say my passion is to become a tax lawyer. But sustainability lies there, security lies there, personal security lies there. So this is very interesting. When we talk about passion, we just now I read Justin Bieber selling his personal records because there is so much of debt on him. Boris Becker, winner of Wimbledon, star player, bankrupt. Mike Tyson, still a brand, but So, following passion has to be done with certain amount of discipline, probably. This is what the word of caution which you were trying to bring in here.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a very well put. I use two different words. I think purpose has to meet preparation.
Yeah.
Right? Just having a solid purpose alone is not good enough unless you have the prep to go with it, unless you have the wherewithal, the knowledge, and the effort, and the reason that you want to be compelled towards that. A couple of more examples that come to mind are my difficulty is not about the passion or so, it's about goals. Having two well-defined goals, in my opinion, and shoot me, in my opinion, is not particularly great. I'll give you two examples. Andre Agassi, he writes, and you can check this in his books, and he's given plenty of interviews about it. All his life, from the age of 5 or 6 or whatever, he was driven to be the number one tennis player in the world. That's all he got up and he thought about it, he went to sleep and dreamt about it, and everything in between was all about becoming the number one tennis player in the world. And guess what? One fine day, he did become the number one tennis player in the world. The next day, he went into clinical depression. Because he oriented his entire life into that singular objective. And there are many examples, Olympic gold medalists, the day they win that gold medal, what happened to Michael Phelps, right? I'm not suggesting that all of us will get into clinical depression or whatever, but there is a way that sometimes if you're too fixated on a particular goal, it could lead into unforeseen situations like this, right? And I can give you plenty more examples, but I want to maybe ask you guys, who's the most famous shooter that put India in the Olympic shooting medal map? So, Abhinav Bindra, thank you. Do you know Abhinav Bindra used to visualize winning the Olympic medal? In his house, and he writes in his book, in his house, he had an Olympic podium built. And every day after practice or whatever, he used to stand on the number one, the gold medal part of the podium, raise the Indian flag and play the Indian national anthem and visualize. Extraordinarily focused, right? Extraordinarily passionate, extraordinarily focused. He did it not just for 1 or 2 days, for years and years and years. And when he actually won the medal, went into depression. In the next Olympics, couldn't perform. Then he stopped worrying about winning medals and started enjoying the sport and came back with a bang in the third Olympics. Right? We can give you tons and tons of examples that. So it's not about finding a passion, but it's about being passionate about what you're doing.
Yes.
Right? It's about giving it all and not just being, goal focused. Today you'll get campus placement. Tomorrow you'll say, I want to become department head in 3 years. How come that one became department head? The minute you start defining your life by these finite goals, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, particularly when comparing with others and their career trajectories. And that's what concerns me the most, that we shouldn't let that happen. So it's not about, you may not be particularly good at it, you may be semi-good at it or whatever, but are you throwing yourself into it every day to become better at it than you were yesterday? That's the principle that I'm talking about, which is the passion part of it.
Andrew Agassi was very lucky to have world number one as wife, finally.
And it took her, it took lots of therapy, it took lots of money, lots of effort to bring him out of that depression. How many people can afford all of that, And we're lucky enough to have world number one as his spouse as well.
Sir, something from your personal life. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that you began your career as a hotelier from hotel management. And then with this big change, so how did you manage this transformation?
I was hoping that question won't come up. But it's a good example, or rather a bad example, depending on how you look at it. of how sometimes your passion can lead you astray. Right from a very young age, I want to be a chef. In those days, uh, I joined the hotel school. I dropped out of IIT, joined hotel school. The director of IIT refused to talk to me because he thought I was dropping out to go to MIT. That was what one did 40 years ago, right? So what you go? No, I said, no, sir, I'm joining hotel management. So get out of my office. I don't want to talk to you. Right? Of course, he was being facetious, and then later he understood my passion. I want to be a chef. And I did hotel school. I graduated in it and realized that just because I was passionate about it didn't make me a good chef. I was terrible at it. I was much better in the food and beverage management aspects, as it turned out. And it took somebody to spot that. And like you would have all heard stories that Sachin Tendulkar initially wanted to be a bowler.
Yeah.
And then somebody spotted and said, actually, here's what you should be doing. So they said, you're an awful chef. Cut your losses, and before you kill more people with your lack of taste and ability to finish products, get into management, because it came naturally to me, maybe, I don't know. And it's thanks to the Tata Group and the Taj Group of hotels, and the way they give you the fungibility and flexibility to move across various areas and identify your potential, because they know that at 18, 19, you don't know that much about anything. And then they fine-tuned it, and then I became a food and beverage manager and general manager and so on and so forth. And that's how, the pivot in your career could happen from an extraneous force. In this case, my boss, the executive chef, who said that you really suck. It wasn't a bad performance appraisal, it was a career pivot. I could have sulked, or I could have quit, and I could have gone to a different company and try and continued my mediocre journey into putting a lot of effort and trying to better myself in my culinary arts, of which I had none. But thanks to good guidance and mentorship and coaching, and the beautiful thing about this journey is that all of this was not about the hotel or the group. It was about me. They focused on what was good for me, not what the hotel needed. The hotel, in fact, needed more chefs than food and beverage managers, right? Because chefs are more difficult to find and hold, because at that time, Australia was the big draw. 80% of my colleagues went to Australia during that time, migrated and as chefs. But the hotel didn't bother about, let's hold on to this. No. They said, we have to do what is good for this guy, for his long-term career. And then, of course, the switch to industries and all that.
Was the transition easy from hotel management to retail management,
No.
and then into
Hewitt,
and then further?
Wow. Okay. So you have gone through my CV. Feel like I'm being interviewed. No, it wasn't easy in the traditional sense of the word. I had to do a lot of unlearning. And I came in as a fairly senior guy into retail from hotels, and I had to start from scratch. So that was a bit of a humbling process. But retail was going to be the next big thing in India. And that's what I was referring to as to Western style retailing in 1988, 1990 was not there in India. Retail stores for garments particularly, where you went to a store and you say, can I see that shirt? And then the guy it'll be in a box and then he'll show it to you. You can't touch it, you can't try it on. He'll have a sample shirt, right? You can't try that shirt and see if that fits in. That's Western style retailing, where you could touch the product, feel it, wear it, give it back, all of that. So that one knew was going to be the next big thing. And so when the retail opportunity presented itself to me, I grabbed it because I knew that was going to be the future. The consulting switch happened by chance. For entirely personal reasons, I want to come back from the UK to India. And when I did, the firm that was actually headhunting me for something else said that, why don't you join us? So sometimes luck plays a part. So the one thing I have as career advice is don't follow my career track, where I left everything to chance. And I just went on good faith and people that I met, and did it sound okay at that point in time? None of my moves were planned. Even the last stint when this is my second gig with Deloitte. In between, I went and worked with the Tata Group for about 3 years. Brilliant organization, brilliant conglomerate. I don't know how such a large organization functions so beautifully. And I'm talking about both Deloitte and the Tatas, right? And I played two different roles in these two. And I think that all of this happened as a sum total of my experiences. So I wouldn't wish away, do I have any regrets? No. Would I have not wanted to be a chef? I think that taught me humility. It taught me the agility of switching from one career track into another. And it also taught me a lot about almost starting from scratch at each time. The stepping sideways we were talking about earlier. You don't always leave one organization to another or start. I'm also a failed entrepreneur. I tried my own business for a couple of years. I ran a restaurant in Hong Kong, which was a miserable disaster. Even though we had a big star rating and all that, we didn't make money. So all of these, I think, contributed to getting me to where I am.
So what I see is that the destiny keeps throwing situations at people.
Yeah.
And if we have good intentions and we are committed on that, eventually we will see success like this.
I hope. Yeah. I hope this is success. I don't know. I'm
Indeed.
pretty happy where I am.
Indeed. There are many people who look towards you as a role model. Of course, I don't think exemplar. So maybe a role model, I don't know. They will choose about it. One more interesting concept that you had spoken about is fulcrum in this pivot. So that's very interesting and very important. So I just wonder if you could re-emphasize it a little more.
I wanted it to come up as a discussion point. I was hoping one of the kids will ask. So there are, if you look at simple machines, right? Okay, let me do an audience poll. How many of you are arts, humanities? Show of hands versus science. Arts and humanities? 2. The rest of you all science and engineering. Oh, commerce, okay. Tax accountants. I come from a commerce firm, we are full of auditors and tax accountants. So how many of you commerce? Show of hands. Okay, hands down. Tech, engineering and tech and STEM and, Okay, so that's the majority. All right, so arts and humanities, 2 people, is it? 2, okay. By the way, organizations need more arts and humanities students today than all the other disciplines combined.
That's the zig and zag of it.
Yeah, so you guys better find niches that are going to use your skills very well. And I'm not talking about organizations like that want liberal arts folks. I'm talking about even hardcore engineering organizations, right? Even tech organizations are looking for, and then we can go into it on another day as to why that trend is happening, etc. But that's the future. In fulcrum, in simple machines, there are 3 kinds, and I think it's important to understand that. Whenever you talk about a fulcrum, there is a load and there is an effort. Are you guys familiar with that? Load and effort. Even a scissor has a fulcrum. Where is the fulcrum of the scissors? In the middle. Right? Where is the load? Whatever you're cutting. Let's say you're cutting paper, that's the load. And where is the effort? On the other side. In a simple seesaw, where is the fulcrum? The middle. You're balancing it. And in a nutcracker, where is the fulcrum? It's at the end. Yeah, you've got the nut, which is the load, and you've got the effort, which is at one end. Right? So you decide what kind of a fulcrum is required for your career at this point in time. For example, if you're going to slice your career opportunity, that's the load. If you're going to slice it, if you're going to look at thin strips of it, then the way you have to pivot your career is through using the fulcrum that is going to be relevant for you at this point in time. For example, if you're going into life sciences, for instance, you have a choice of going into commercial or sales or R&D or finance or whatever, right? Life sciences is an industry, but the function that you want to get into in life sciences is how you use the fulcrum to pivot your career in terms of how you're going to slice it, right? And you need to choose where is it that you'll see opportunities coming. And I know it sounds a little metaphorical right now, but if you start analyzing whatever your target industry is and target function is, it will start making sense. Whereas if you're just looking to crush your career, right? Bite the bullet, become an entrepreneur, right? And I want to become an entrepreneur today, and I don't know why not. So all these studies that you keep reading that our college graduates are not employable and our MBA graduates are not employable, they need to be retrained and so on, a large majority of them, etc. My counter to that is, why does industry assume that college graduates and MBAs are there to come and work for industry? I think learning has to be critical. And why can't we go and do our own thing in a more informed, in a more structured way, rather than just counting on native intelligence? Why is entrepreneurship not the primary target of youngsters like you? Why would you want to go and work for someone? If you have something that, like a walnut, you can crush that idea, you've got it in your grip, that's a different fulcrum. And if you want work-life balance, use the seesaw. Okay, listen, I don't want to grow too rapidly and all. I have so many other interests in life. I have so many other personal priorities. I want a very balanced work life. I'm okay. If you don't put disproportionate effort, you don't get disproportionate results. I want a balanced career. Beautiful. But be clear. And that's your fulcrum. So that's what I mean by choose your fulcrum in terms of what appeals to you, what suits your personal situation the most, rather than just going with where everybody else is going. Because no one else is looking after your career. You have to look after. And only you know where the inner happiness and the inner comfort and the inner stability will come from. And if, like, I was serious about that, about the balance between work and life. Some of us want that. Maybe we have other ways of engaging ourselves differently, right? Maybe we have other contributions that we want to make to the world or society or community or our family or whatever it is, or academia or anything, where money might not be the most important thing, where we need that luxury of time. Another way, and I'll stop here, is ask yourself this question. If I had all the time and all the money in the world, what would I do? That's your true calling. You may not be able to do it immediately, but that's what you're going to work towards. If you had all the time and all the money in the world, you've just defined your purpose.
Thank you so much, sir, for your time, your effort, your patience in taking up such wide-ranging questions. And I think the audiences have learned how important it is to take a pause, to have reflection especially with people who have different perspectives. People often tend to take their passion as probably the further steps of progression, but we understood that it has to be done with some caution. And you are following your passion, it is fine, but at the same time, the financial discipline and intelligence needs to be increased. And then we also saw the benefits of compounding. We also saw the benefit, if the world is going towards one side, we should not forget that there is something called duality. If something X on this side is in demand, very soon the trade cycles are going to create demand for entirely opposite.
Well said, yeah.
And having an entrepreneurial mindset is very important. Whether you fail or as you succeed, the firms, the companies see that the thought process that an entrepreneur has, the willingness to take risk, the willingness to take observations from all around, this is a great characteristic. And all companies, all firms are going to welcome people with this kind of attitude. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your time.